started shortly. See, there's about 42 people in this session, so I would love to see as much participation as possible. If you have a moment as you're logging in and getting settled, please go ahead and click on the poll that we do have in the lower portion of the screen. Let us know when you're going to be taking the GMAT. It helps us get a pulse of the class. Let us know where everybody is at. We also have some information on our upcoming free webinars, so go ahead and grab that, and video lessons are at the top of the screen. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to go ahead and get yourself settled in, answer these polls, and we're going to get started in just about 1 minute. Give any stragglers that are going to be joining us a minute to join us, and then we're going to move on over into the presentation pane. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. I see a few more people have joined us. So for those of you that did just join, good evening, good morning. It's morning time for me where I am. My name is Stacy Trepanier. I am one of the sentence correction experts here on the e-GMAT team, and I am going to be one of your hosts. We will be joined by Shraddha, who is my great partner. The second portion of the session, excuse me, see, it is morning for me, session to take us through the second two questions. If you did just join us, please let me know you can hear me okay by clicking on that yes button in the middle of your screen to let me know that the audio is okay. I see for the majority of you it is, and that number is going up, so perfect. I'm going to go ahead and move on over into our presentation pane so we can get started. No more wasting time. Let me clear this yes/no poll that's over here. You are going to see a presentation that says sentence correction. Once that presentation stabilizes for you and you can see it in your screen, please click that yes button in that middle poll so I know that you guys can see this and that you are good to go. We have about 58 now people in the session this morning. I would love to have 100% participation, and what I mean by participation is that you guys are clicking on these polls, you're letting me know that you're out there and that you are actively engaged in solving these sentences and working with us. This morning, you only get out as much as you put in. Shraddha and I can sit here and talk to you all morning, but unless you actively engage in the session, you are not going to get a ton out of it. And so right now, I only have 29 of you out of 64 telling me that you can see the presentation. So that is not awesome participation. I want to see a lot more moving forward. But we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's session is going to be broken down into two parts. We are going to have the live session. We'll try to get through this in about 120 minutes. We do have 4 official hard questions that we are going to be working through with you. And then we have 20 minutes where our sensei, as I call him, or founder, Rajat, is going to be joining you to answer questions and discuss a few things with you. So, 2 types of learning when we're preparing for the GMAT. One type, obviously, is that book-based architecture. You can grab that book off the shelf and study. And the second type is that private tutor, where you sit with a private tutor and you work through the private tutor. So what is e-GMAT? Well, we're a little bit different. We're kind of the best blend of all worlds, and we're going to kind of show you how we do that and how we do that better than anybody else. And sentence correction is really kind of a game changer for us. And the way we're going to work through this is we're going to show you that 3-step meaning-based approach that e-GMAT has become known for, and how it's kind of changed the game of sentence correction and how it will make solving SC questions easy for you. We always say easy peasy lemon squeezy if you can apply this approach. So if you are going to be solving this first question with me, few housekeeping tips. We are going to open the poll at the top. And if you're going to solve this question with me, I need you to click on Still Solving. And once I see that we have a good number of people who are going to be solving this question, then I will move to the question and unveil the question. If you have a question, don't click on the answer choices yet until we see the question. Everybody should be clicking on Still Solving. If you have a question during our discussion and I don't get to your answer, you can go ahead and pop it down in the Q&A poll. We have Shraddha and Sandeep here. They will be able to answer all your questions if they're content-based or if they're technical questions about e-GMAT in general, our programming, and Sandeep can get to those. We will cover all these questions in detail, so I ask you to please be patient with us as we work through the question, because chances are we will get to your question, and then if we don't get to your question, pop it in that Q&A pod down at the bottom, and Shraddha will answer it, and once Shraddha is presenting, I will be down there to answer it. So I see about 23 of you are participating. We've got about 80 people. I'm getting ready to reveal this first question, but in order to allot the appropriate amount of time, I need to know how many people are participating. So let's get some more people clicking on Still Solving that have joined us. As far as timing goes, I am going to watch the pulse of the class. So typically we take about 1.5 minutes to solve these ST questions, but I'm going to watch the numbers, and when about half the class has solved and locked in their answer choices, I'm going to give you that 30-second warning, and then once that 30-second warning is done, we're going to go ahead and give you that 10-second countdown, and then we will move into our discussion. All right, so we're going to go ahead, and I only have about 30, really low participation, guys. Let's go. Let's get clicked on Still Solving. I know it's late for some of you, those of you that have joined me, and it's like 7:30, 8 o'clock in your part of the world. Kudos for being here, but I would love to see a lot of participation. The numbers are really low, but for those of you that I haven't revealed the question yet, Neha, I was waiting to see how many more people were going to be solving it. So if you are solving with me, click on that Still Solving. All right, here is the question. 90 seconds about, but I will watch the pulse of the class. I want you to use the approach that you currently use, okay? So whatever approach you're currently using, apply that approach, and then we'll talk about it. Best of luck. Okay, about 30 seconds remaining. Let's lock in those final answers. Okay, I see about 4 of you still need to lock in your answer choices. Our time is about up. I'm going to give you that 5, 4, 3, 2, okay. Ending this poll now. Oh, good. Everybody got them in. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to reopen this yes/no poll. Give me a thumbs up. How confident are you guys feeling with your answer choices here? Pretty confident in your current approach? Semi-confident? How are we feeling? Okay, let me broadcast these results so you guys can see the pulse of the class. All right, so a lot of us are feeling pretty confident. We're going to get to your results in just a little bit. Let's talk about the way most people approach a question. I want you to think about your personal thought process first and foremost. How did you go about this? What method did you use? Really break that down, because that strategy does become important when you're dealing with sentence correction. So we're going to talk about a popular way that students do this. One popular way and one thought process, and one we see that a lot of students use when they first join us, is that you read through the question, right? You go ahead and you start reading the overall slackening of growth and productivity is influenced less by government regulation, although that is significant for specific industries like mining, than the coming to an end of a rapid period of growth in agricultural productivity. So you read through that question and you look at that underlined portion and you start scanning through your answer choices, and you're looking for patterns, you're looking for similarities. Now, obviously, we've all had some grammar training, and we notice right away that we have less by sitting up here in the top portion of our sentence, and we get to that underlined portion and we're like, oh, okay, so we have kind of this comparison being less by, than, and we know we need by here, than by, because we have those grammar tools. So we start scanning and we're looking for those patterns with by, okay? And so we look at A and B and we immediately are going to get rid of these because we know that there's no by. So those are a quick elimination. And then we get C, D, and E. And we start using what is popularly referred to as the splits method, and or what I call the fast food method, where you try to get to this answer choice quick and easy, right? Like fast food, we do that drive-through method. It's a quick option to get something in our stomachs. We know it's not really the best option, but it's quick and easy. And so this is what we call the splits method, scanning, eliminating based on patterns. So we eliminate A and B, and then we try to decide which of C, D, and E is correct. And as we make this scan, we go, okay, well, C, by the coming to an end of, that's long and wordy. So we get rid of C, we reject that one. And then we look at by ending and by the end of. And between these two, we see, well, maybe E is better, right? By the end of, this is, parallel to the government regulations, both are noun entities. So we reject D and we select E. So this is what we call that splits fast food approach. I want to ask you really quickly, I'm going to clear this yes/no poll. How many of you use this approach or something close to this approach? And be honest. There's no harm in being honest here. What if you're using this type of, I have to reopen the poll for you. There we go. How many of us are using this kind of scan, quick elimination method? Okay, so a good number of you. Very interesting. Okay, That's okay. But what I want to show you here is if we're using this approach, does this get us to the right answer choice? And we're going to find out the result is not going to be great because obviously choice E is not the correct answer choice here. Okay, so this is an official question. It's from the Advanced Official Guide. It is, they call it a grammar-based question, but really this is a meaning-based question because to get to the correct answer choice, you 100% have to focus on the meaning. You can't solve this high level of a question by using the splits pattern recognition or just your grammar tools, because we saw all three of those answer choices provided us with that right piece of grammar we needed. So that corrected our grammar error. Okay, so to get to that 90th percentile, to get to that score that you want, to get to that school that you want, you need to embrace this meaning-based approach because that's going to be the game changer. That's going to be the difference between getting to the right answer on a lot of these questions and being able to overcome those constraints of grammar. Okay, so let's talk about this. The first thing we want you to do is really spend the time up front understanding what that sentence is communicating, reading slowly through the sentence, strategically pausing at key points and really saying, okay, what is the author trying to tell me here? What's being communicated? And as we read through this sentence, we see the overall slackening of growth and productivity is influenced. Okay, so I have this slackening, and this slackening obviously is of growth, and I know this slackening is influenced. All right, well, what is it influenced by? I get my first entity here. One, it's influenced less by government regulation, although that is significant for specific industries like mining. So, okay, this is describing this government regulation to me. That's making sense. And then I get that second thing that it is influenced by. Then the coming to an end. So the second piece of a rapid period of growth in agriculture productivity. Okay, so I have my two things that I'm being told that this slackening is influenced by. Makes sense. Now, I'm going to pull these key aspects and really try to understand what is being talked about and kind of put this into my own words. The sentence explains the factors behind the reduction in growth of productivity. Aspect 2 is the reduction happens for those two reasons, and we marked up those two reasons, right? 1, 2, okay? And then the third thing is that comparison between those two reasons, right? Number 2 has more impact than 1, right? So obviously less by than by, right? So this one obviously has more impact. Okay, so all our aspects are clear. We get a clear understanding of what that comparison is. We kind of put this into our own words. Now, I have this underlined portion sitting here. And I need to ask myself, what does this, the coming to an end of, mean? And I'm going to bring over a new poll. So let me do a little moving around here. I'm going to open this poll. I want you guys to tell me. Oh, I made my poll really big. There we go. Really quickly, take about 30 seconds to tell me, what does the coming to an end of mean? Okay, about 5 seconds, and I'm locking this one down. 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm ending this poll. Okay, so let's talk about this, because really understanding the meaning of that underlined portion becomes essential here. So the period is slowly drawing to an end. So look at, I'm going to use some visuals. My woolly mammoths here. So if I have this large group of woolly mammoths in this ice age, right? And in period A, and then the period ends in D. And I say the woolly mammoth became extinct by the coming to the end of the Ice Age. I know that this sentence is communicating to me that I have a large number of woolly mammoths in period A. And then as that period is slowly coming to an end, you see my numbers slowly decrease. And by the time I get to the end, there's no more woolly mammoths. They're extinct. Okay, so that would be that slow drawing to an end. There's no boom, all the woolly mammoths are gone. It's that slow decline that led to extinction. Okay, so the expression of the slow coming to an end, and the large number isn't the point here. The point here is that the period is slowly drawing to an end. Okay, so the extinction happened over that slow course of time. It didn't happen all at one time, right? By the coming to the end of the Ice Age tells me that by the time that end approached, the extinction slowly happened. Okay, now choice B, the woolly mammoth became extinct by ending the Ice Age. This would indicate to us in some way that there was some type of action or entity that ended the period. Okay, and maybe a comet hit, or maybe there was a great, I don't know, avalanche or something, and something ended the Ice Age. And that is a very different meaning than by the coming to the end of the Ice Age. We have no outside actor that's ending the period here. So B is definitely not the answer. Now C, the woolly mammoth became extinct by the end of the Ice Age. Whoop, sorry, the PPT drummed. Now here, there's a little bit more room for ambiguity that some of us get confused on. And this is saying that just by the end of the Ice Age, the mammoth became extinct. But do we get that sense of that slow progression of slowly over the course of time they became extinct? Absolutely not. All we get here is that at some time between A and between D, when it ended, the species went extinct. We don't get that sense of that slow progression over time. They became extinct. So does everybody see now, if I broadcast the results, the correct answer here was A. So 72% of you that are participating with me saw this clear meaning. So those of you that selected B and C, I hope this change in meaning is really clear. Now, think about that change in meaning and how this coming to an end of what that's communicating in our sentence. This is the underlying portion. And so this underlying portion and the meaning that's being communicated by this underlying portion, that slow drawing to an end of the period, becomes really, really important in aspect 2, because there's no actor ending the period. And it's not just that by the end this happened, it's that progression over a period of time. So we have to make sure that we keep those aspects in check. And I want you to do a self-check here and ask yourself, okay, was I able to identify all these parts? Did I stop and think about the meaning of this underlying portion? Did I really have a sense of what the coming to an end of a period was? Take that beat. We have to ask ourselves, what is the author intending to communicate? Is this communication making sense? Okay, now that we've discussed that meaning and you've done that self-check, if I give you a second chance at this question, what are we answering? I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds. Fifteen seconds. All right, anybody else locking in answers, please do so now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to end the results. And now I'm going to broadcast the results for both polls. Now look at the difference. Once we focused on the meaning and we discussed the meaning, the shift in answer choices here. So C had about 22% votes when our first go around, and now that we've discussed that meaning and everybody really understands the meaning, now we're at 64%. So hopefully you see here how you have to really focus on the meaning and how that will make the difference. Now, if we work through that meaning process, and I know some of you are like, well, how do I do this in the allotted amount of time? Practice, guys. Work through it. Once you practice, actively reading that sentence becomes second nature. Asking those probing questions becomes habit, and your time becomes lickety-split. It's just habits, okay? So obviously, you do that meaning analysis like we just did. You dig deep into that meaning. Then you get to that second step, which is the error analysis. Obviously, you've got those grammar tools. Everybody in the first go-around rejected choice A. I mean, I think only one person rejected choice A. So we know that we have less by, and our grammar knowledge tells us we need than by. Okay, so we know we have that grammatical error. We're missing that by. We have that parallelism error. So we need to get to that correct answer choice. You can absolutely reject choices A and B because it's missing the by. Then we get those 3 other answer choices. We focus on the meaning, that slow drawing to an end of the period. So we can reject D because, again, as we discussed, that's that action of ending the period, and nobody's doing an action of ending this period here. Then we come down to C and E, which are the 2 most popular choices. And again, we know we're not choosing E because of that communication of that slow drawing to an end of the period. So choice C is indeed our correct answer. Okay, that being said, hopefully all of you see with the use of your logic and using your grammar only as a backup tool, you get to the correct answer choice. Okay, this is a test of meaning and logic. They want to know if you can communicate. They want to know if you can express the meaning correctly. And we see how choice C distorts that meaning. How are we feeling now that we've discussed this? Let me bring back up this yes/no poll and reopen this. Let me clear the old answers for you guys. How are we feeling? Are we understanding the approach? Okay, good. All right, awesome. Let's keep moving. We've got more questions for you. So, meaning. This is some observations about this first question, just to give you guys a quick snapshot about it. Oh, PPT is jumping. It wants to move on. It is from OG Advanced. You can use the splits approach to get to 2 answer choices only. Reject D and E grammatically correct, but the meaning change. So the only way to get to the correct answer choice is using the meaning. Absolutely the only way. It becomes imperative. All right, let me switch this poll out. I want you guys to do a quick stretch. And let me bring in question number 2. Reopen this poll. If you're going to be solving question 2 with me, please go ahead and click on still solving. I've got a bunch of you here now, 97 people. I'd love to see our numbers jump up close to that. Let's see if we can get 75 of you solving with us. That would be awesome. 50, well, we're getting close. Come on, a few more. Can I get at least to 70? The questions are going to get a little bit harder as we go, so just keep that in mind. Again, timing, when about 50% of you land on your answer choices, then I will go ahead and give you that 30-second warning. We're 2 away from 60. Some of you are just sleeping on me today. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reveal the question and let those of you that are energetic and ready to get to work start solving. Let me not broadcast the results for that. I'm going to mute myself while you're solving the question, but I wish you the best of luck. Please try to apply this new approach as you're solving this next question. 30 seconds remaining. Okay, I have about 6 of you that still need to lock in those answer choices. If you guys could go ahead and do so now. I'm going to give you about 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, we're down to 3. Last 3 people want to lock in those answer choices. That would be great. 2. 1. All right, maybe they have stepped away. I'm going to go ahead. Oh, 2 more. Anyone? No? All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Let me reopen this yes/no poll. How was this question for you guys? How did we feel about this one? A little bit more confident? Let me broadcast the results here. Awesome. Were we applying this new approach? I hope that confidence, yes, is with this new approach that you're using here. All right. I'm going to say the results look better here. We're going to go through it before I reveal your results. I'm going to bring over this short answer poll and move out this yes/no poll. So stretch those fingers out. I'm going to ask you guys to do a little bit of typing in this short answer poll and give me some answers to some questions. So let me stretch it out here so I can see your answers when you type them in. There we go. Okay, so let's start talking here about this question. So again, we're going to use step 1, that slow extraction of the meaning, reading through the questions slowly, pausing to extract those key aspects. So I start reading and I see although appearing less appetizing, and right away when I see although sitting at the beginning of my sentence, here's that first short answer question. I'm going to ask you, what do I know I'm getting with although? What do I need to start looking for? Excellent. Good job. Thank you for the participation. A contrast. So I'm going to keep my eyes peeled for that contrast, okay? And make sure that I know at the end of this what is being contrasted. So although appearing less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins. All right, so I have this description about something, and I know that whatever this is less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins. And then I get to know what we're talking about. We're talking about heirloom tomatoes. Okay, so these heirloom tomatoes, less appetizing, most of their round and red supermarket cousins. All right, I keep going. Grown from seeds saved during the previous year. All right, so these heirloom tomatoes are grown from seeds. So grown here, I'm going to ask you guys this question. Let me clear these answers because this always trips students up. I always get a few questions about this. Grown, is this a verb here or is this describing heirloom tomatoes? If I'm reading through this, grown. All right, it's good job. Thank you. It is describing, it is telling me how these heirloom tomatoes are grown from seeds, right? So this is not a verb. This is a description of the heirloom tomatoes, telling me how they're grown. They're grown from seeds saved during the previous year. So check, that properly associates with the heirloom tomato. So I can kind of do this, grown describes heirloom tomatoes. All right, I make that association. We're going to keep going. They are often green and striped or have plenty of bumps and bruises. Now, anytime I see in a sentence a pronoun, I call them pronoun demons. If we don't check our little pronoun demons, they can really mess the meaning of a sentence up. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to ask, what are often green and striped and have plenty of bumps and bruises. What is this little pronoun demon referring to? All right, so somebody said heirloom tomatoes, somebody said cousins. Now let me ask you, if you're thinking cousins, we already know that the cousins are round and red. So does it make any sense for they to refer to the cousins? Are the cousins round and red and green and striped? That doesn't make any sense. They is absolutely incorrectly referring to heirloom tomatoes. Okay, so I'm going to mark heirloom tomatoes here. HT. Heirloom tomatoes are often green and striped or have plenty of bumps and bruises. Makes sense. Heirlooms, okay, are more flavorful and thus increasing in demand. So my sentence is making logical sense here. I've done my due diligence. I've read slowly. I'm going to pull the key aspects. And another way to pull key aspects is to ask probing questions. So I'm going to ask you guys some probing questions, and then we're going to turn those probing questions into key aspects. What appears less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins? Awesome. Yes. Heirloom tomatoes. Perfect. Next probing question. What are grown from seeds saved during the previous years? Good. Again, heirloom tomatoes. Thank you for the participation. What are often green and striped and often have bumps and bruises? Awesome. Heirloom tomatoes. And I promise, last question. What are more flavorful and hence increasing in demand? Okay. Heirloom tomatoes. Perfect. So we have asked these probing questions, and now that we've asked these probing questions, we can turn our answers to these probing questions into our key aspects here, right? Heirloom tomatoes appear less appetizing than their round and red supermarket cousins. Heirloom tomatoes are grown from seeds. Heirloom tomatoes, they, we have that pronoun there. We've made that proper reference. We know what it's referring to, are often green and striped or have bumps and bruises, and heirloom tomatoes are more flavorful and hence in increasing demand. So the meaning is clear and straightforward here. Okay, I wanted to try them too. I've worked with this question for so long. I actually went to the grocery store and bought some. They're delicious. Totally side note. Sorry guys, but they are really good. So you should definitely, if you can find them, buy them. Okay, anyways, so the next thing we need, now that we have that clear meaning, we have to stop and we have to go back to this contrast. And we have to make sure we understand that contrast. We can't forget about that although stating at the beginning of the sentence. So what is the contrast indicated by the word although? Which of these aspects? Tell me really quick in that short answer. Oh, no, it went forward. Which of the aspects? Hopefully you didn't see it. Most tomatoes in India have bumps and bruises. Oh, I haven't been to India, but I will have to come someday. I'm learning lots about the culture there. Okay, but I need a contrast. So if you're just giving me one thing, I need two things. Good. The look and taste. Yes. Or, as the PowerPoint gave away to you because it jumped forward on me, aspect 1 and aspect 4, right? Heirloom tomatoes appear less appetizing, but even though they're the ugly duckling of tomatoes, they are more flavorful and hence increasing in demand. Okay, so is the meaning clear to everybody? Is the meaning clear? Check. All right, absolutely. Yes, yes, as soon as you fill up my short answer poll. All right, so then we're gonna go on to step 2 and ask that next question. Are there any grammatical errors in the sentence? Uh-oh, now we're going to have a debate. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. What do you guys think? For sure. Okay. So, all right. Yes, there are. There absolutely is. We do have a grammatical error, so yes, and we are missing a verb for heirloom tomatoes. And that's why I took the time to stop and talk to you guys about grown here, because this is the big mistake that a lot of people make. If you selected choice A and you thought that this sentence was okay, you possibly thought grown was the verb for heirloom tomatoes, but it's not. It's a modifier there, okay? Heirloom tomatoes does not have a verb. We have they, and the two verbs associated with they are and have, and we have heirlooms here and are. But this subject up here is sitting there without a verb. So we have a problem with choice A. There's no verb for the subject. And I always say with subject verb pairs, they're like dance partners, right? Everybody needs a dance partner. And in this case, heirloom tomatoes has no dance partner. So we need to find an answer choice that provides us with that dance partner, okay? So here are our quick snapshot of all the answer choices. Let me broadcast the results here for you guys on your answer choices. So choice B is indeed the correct answer. And look at how much better we did on this question than the first one. Hopefully the approach worked for you. Choice B is indeed the correct answer. So we rejected A because of that missing verb, okay? Now choice B gives us that verb, heirloom tomatoes, and now we have appear as the verb for heirloom tomatoes. And that modifier is still in place, grown from seeds, okay? And then we still have everything else intact, meaning-wise, nothing has changed. Our contrast is intact. So choice B is our perfect answer choice. It corrects that original error and doesn't alter that meaning that we had. Now take a look at choice C. We did have a few people land with choice C. Now, if you rejected choice A, but you accepted choice C, you made the same error. Possibly you didn't reject choice A on the right grounds, but choice C makes the same mistake. There's no verb for heirloom tomatoes, okay? Although they appear, so here they appear less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins, heirloom tomatoes, and then there's no verb, okay? So that's the big error there. Now choice D, which a few people picked, and those would be my people who possibly haven't embraced my meaning-based approach yet, we see that heirloom tomatoes appear, so our grammar error has been fixed here, but we have a meaning change. Notice the contrast has been removed, although is missing. And when we remove that contrast that was stated in the original sentence, we have a meaning change. So when we have that meaning change, we can't accept that answer. So the removal of choice, although from choice D gives us that incorrect answer choice, even though it's grammatically correct. So if you accepted choice D, you really have to look at that meaning. Now choice E, again, the same mistake as choice A, no verb for heirloom tomatoes, okay? So pretty straightforward. Glad to see our statistics here were much better. Use probing questions. That's another method to extract the meaning and find those errors. When you look at the meaning and then you look at the errors, you can see that this kind of an incomplete sentence. What types of clauses is the hyphen? The hyphen is similar to a comma. I mean, it's not a hyphen clause. It's just a grammatical construct. It's similar to using a comma. If they wasn't there in the original sentence, then will the original sentence be correct? Yeah, if we had associated those two verbs with heirloom tomatoes, yes. Absolutely. Okay? So always check those subject-verb errors. Okay? Those are foundational building blocks, so you always have to check to make sure those dance partners exist. Here's the quick snapshot, and my PPT wants to jump. This is also from OG Verbal. It is an advanced question, 700 level question. Splits not possible, okay? B and D were both grammatically correct, but D changed the meaning. So you have to look at the meaning to get to that correct answer choice. So in order to get to the correct choice B, 100% meaning required. Nice job for the 52% of you that landed there. That wraps it up for me. I am going to turn the show over to my partner in crime, Shraddha, who is the real expert. Official guide. That's OG, not original gangster. Official guide. I'm going to turn this over to Shraddha. She has been doing this for, oh wow, over a decade now. She is the true master of sentence correction. I call her Batman. She knows all the tips and tricks. She's going to take you guys through the next two questions. Shraddha, over to you.
Hi guys, if you can hear me well, could you just click on the yes or no poll? Let me just quickly clear this one. All right, go ahead and click on yes or no. Okay, quick answers coming in. Thank you for confirming, and thank you, Stacy, for that beautiful explanations for the first question, slackening of coming to an end. That was really, really nice, and it really helped us understand how this phrase works in the sentence. That was really nice. And of course, all the contrast and the meaning that we understood in the heirloom tomatoes question. And thank you for letting us know that heirloom tomatoes are nice. I'm going to try them too. All right. So far, we've solved two questions in this session, and we are talking about the meaning-based approach, right? We started off this this whole session is called Learn How to Master the Meaning-Based Approach. So I would just like to give you a little background about why meaning-based approach, why we are focusing so much on the original sentence. Because come to think of it, original sentence is a story that the author wants to present. And that story has to be logical, because any communication that we make, either written or verbal, it is always logical, right? People talk logically, they exchange logical communication. So it is the original sentence that actually helps us understand the intended logical meaning. Now, the author might mess up grammatically, while writing the sentence, or might mess up logically also while writing the original sentence. But we must know one thing, that it is the original sentence that contains enough information to make us understand what should be the logical intended meaning of the sentence. Now, why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because the first two questions that we solved, the intended meaning of the sentence was really, really clear. We did not have to scratch our heads to find out the logic that goes with the context of the sentence. They only had some grammatical errors. We had to, coming to an end, of course, that's a classic example of choosing elegant expression, choosing between the elegant expression and the logical expression, right? So we did have that logical thing over there, but OG Advanced does not even consider it as a meaning question, because they kind of take it for granted that people would know that there is a glaring difference between the expression coming to an end and by the end of. The meaning is very, very different of these two expressions. So that's why I say that the first two questions, the way they were written, we didn't have to think too much about the intended meaning. But the next two questions that we are going to solve here, they will not present the logical meaning. So what would we do in that case? Would it going to be very, very difficult? No, it's not. Why? Because all of us are logical people. We understand the basic logical workings of the world, right? So even if the sentence does not present logical meaning, you will be able to work through that logic in that sentence, because the information contained within the sentence will help you arrive at the intended logic. And that is exactly what we are going to do with the next two questions. Okay, so before I show you the question, can I please request all of you to click on still solving? That's a ritual, because we do not time you by the clock. We time you by how others in your group are doing, because we do not want timing to be an excuse or an issue for you not solving the question correctly. And it's never the case. It's not that if you were given any more time than 2 minutes, you would be able to solve the question. It's really about the process. It's really about the approach. And that's why so much stress on the meaning-based approach. A few more participants, please. We have 95 people. Even if I can get that number to 50, that would be good. All right, great. I got that. So here is the third question on your screen. Many of them chiseled. These are the first few words. So all the very best. Keep that logical hat on. All the best. All right, I see most of you are done solving this question. So for the rest of you who are still making your choices, let's take 10 seconds to finish this off. Three, 2, 1, 0. Okay, I'm about to end this poll. I still see 4 people on, still solving. You want to make just a random choice? No? Okay, I'm closing the poll here. Let's move on with this question. We are definitely going to use the meaning-based approach for this question. And for all the questions, you will see that we've broken down the sentence into smaller chunks. Why do we do so? We do so because if you read a long sentence, for example, both the sentences that we solved, slackening of the growth and the heirloom tomato questions, they were long. This is comparatively a shorter sentence, but the other two sentences were pretty long. So if we try to read everything in one go, we will not be able to understand the entire meaning of the sentence. And that's the first thing that we need to learn while solving SC questions, how to read the sentence correctly. And that can only happen if you break the sentence down into smaller pieces, understand the meaning of each and every piece, and assimilate the meaning as you go on. It's like your puzzle pieces. I always tell this, that SC is like solving a puzzle. Every piece you need to study it well. In the puzzle pieces, we read the visual information on every piece. In SC, we understand the logical meaning communicated by each and every piece, and we connect them accordingly so that we get the complete picture, we get the complete story. So make sure that next time you see an SC question, you're not trying to read everything in one go, and do read that original sentence very, very carefully. Always remember, original sentence is not there just to provide one of the 5 answer choices. It is the original sentence that tells you the logic of the sentence. You are not going to understand the meaning through the answer choices because they are just a fragment of your entire story. The real logic will come out, the real understanding of the sentence will come out from the original sentence itself. So what we have done here is that we've divided this sentence into 2 parts. My first part reads, and let me get my pen here. So the first part reads, many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Okay, so the sentence is talking about some things that were chiseled from solid rock many, many years ago. Okay. So now that I have read the first part, I'm expecting that my sentence will talk about those things that have been chiseled or that were chiseled so many years ago. And then I read this part. The mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia are dotted with hundreds of monasteries. Now, before I tell you, before I solve this question with you, let me ask you this. The way the sentence is written, again, listen to my question carefully. I'm asking, the way the sentence is written, what is it saying? What is chiseled? The way the sentence is written. When I read the sentence, the way it is written, what is it saying? What is chiseled? Absolutely correct. All of you are saying that it is the mountainous regions are chiseled. Mountainous regions of North Ethiopia are chiseled. Now let's just visualize. We all know we are aware of that tool chisel, and the hammer. In sculpting, it is used a lot. I'm not a sculptor, but at least from the general workings of the world, I have this much knowledge that chisel is a tool which is used along with hammer in sculpting. Now, if I visualize this whole sentence, what's coming in my mind is that there is a huge block of rock, and maybe somebody is sitting out there with a hammer and a chisel, and that person or those people they chiseled out the mountainous regions. Now, does this even make sense? Can people chisel out mountainous regions? Not at all. See, I just asked you a question and you're giving me all the right answers because you all are logical people. All of you, right? And you understand that no, the meaning presented by this sentence is not right. How can anyone chisel mountainous regions? So, come to look at it. These are the few aspects. What are the aspects? The aspects are those logical points that the sentence presents, right? So we are talking about mountainous regions of a particular geographical location, And then we are said that the mountainous regions were chiseled many, many years ago. And these mountainous regions, there are many monasteries on these mountainous regions. So this aspect 2 that we are dealing with is absolutely absurd, as you're saying. I totally agree with that, because we all know mountainous regions cannot be chiseled. So I'm not going to take the help of the answer choices, okay? I'm going to stick with my original sentence and try to figure out what could be the logic that will work in this sentence. Now, if I study this sentence, what do you think can be chiseled? Which entity in this sentence will go with this whole action of chiseling? Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And I see no contest here. All of you are talking it has to be monasteries, because monasteries are something that are man-made, and so anything man-made, if human beings are trying to chisel something out of a rock, they would definitely need some tools like chisel and hammer. So the word chiseled right there is my key word that helps me visualize this entire sentence and understand the logic of it. Right? Now, I have another question for you before I move on to our answer choices to find. Now we understand that, hey, the way the sentence is written, it doesn't make sense. Many of them should not be chiseled about the mountainous regions. It should be talking about hundreds of monasteries. We are all on the same page. My next question to you is, suppose if I pick up this descriptor over here, right? Something have been chiseled, and place it right here after hundreds of monasteries. Do you think my sentence will be fine? It will be giving me the correct logic? What do you think? What I'm doing is, I'm picking up many of them chiseled, just like I would pick up a puzzle piece at a wrong place, and I'll put it after hundreds of monasteries, something that it should be talking about. And see, all of you are saying that yes, that makes sense. It will actually correct my sentence. Or at this point in time, I just want you to understand and appreciate the beauty of the meaning-based approach. I'm not talking about any grammar in this sentence. What I did is that I only looked at this sentence from pure logical perspective, and I have come to the point to understand that what my correct answer choice should look like. Now, not every time I'll be able to preempt this, that what my not what my correct answer choice should be, but at least for this question, when I've spent that time up front with my original sentence, working out some information here and there, I do understand that, hey, all I need to do is pick up that first part of the sentence and place it really after hundreds of monasteries, and my problem will be solved. With this understanding, when I come to my answer choices, things become so very clear. Scanning through the answer choices becomes a cakewalk. And so again, before I look at the thing, a little information about this sentence. Question 257 from Official Advanced, definitely 700 plus question, 700 level question, completely communication based. All we had to do is to understand the logic of the sentence. Once we understand that, I exactly know what I'm looking for in this sentence. Yes, that is correct. Communication based means meaning based. Okay. Okay, so I have a question here. What if I don't know the meaning of chisel? Is there any way to tackle the logical problem here? See, GMAT does not throw a question at you which requires knowledge of a very specific area. GMAT is not partial in that sense. Are we saying that only doctors will be able to answer questions that could be on medical science or physical science or so on and so forth? that is not the intent of GMAT SC. They will be so generic, very, very basic, so that you will understand the meaning of the sentence. And something that would be technical, the author will take the pain of explaining that thing to you. So do not worry about these things at all. Do not worry about this. You know, a word is used in a sentence in the entire context, not in isolation. So if you try to understand the meaning of the entire sentence, you will be able to tackle with that situation. Okay? So now that I know that this is my issue with the sentence, it's just the modifier, and I asked you the question. All of you told me that yes, if I put the first part of the sentence right after monasteries, my problem will be solved with this question. All right, so with this understanding, let's now see what is the problem in each answer choice. Choice B is definitely incorrect because we still have that logical issue. And if I broadcast the results, your selection of answer choices does tell me that you were thinking logically when you attempted this question, because none of you, just 2 of you selected choice A, only 7 of you selected choice B. We definitely have this meaning issue here, and then we have redundancy issue as well. To add to my logical problem, many hundreds already mean many. Why do I need the word many over there? So logical as well as grammatical error in choice B. What's happening in choice C? Choice C for the first time speaks logic to me, right? It says hundreds of monasteries, many of them chiseled. So now many of them chiseled, because it is right after hundreds of monasteries. We understand that, okay, it's hundreds of monasteries that were chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. But the problem with this choice is the use of the present continuous tense verb are dotting. Are dotting, it tells me that right now, when we are in this session, these monasteries are coming up on those regions. These monasteries are being chiseled right now as we talk. But that is not the case. We are not talking about any continuous action in this sentence. And that's why choice C is incorrect. Okay. So we have a few slides over here for you to take a look at the differences in meaning presented by are dotting versus dotted, which is really the present continuous tense and simple past tense verb. PDF will be shared at the end of the session, so you can take a look at those. Now, the main contestants in these questions have always been choice D and E. And if you look at the margin, just by 3 votes, E is the winner. And that is correct. Choice E indeed is the correct answer. Okay. Where are we losing out in choice D? It is this. Everything is working fine. The mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia are dotted wherever the modifier that we were talking about in choice A has actually been placed after hundreds of monasteries. But the only problem with this choice is the usage of this simple present tense verb for an action that took place centuries ago. How can we use any verb in the present context for an action that took place hundreds and hundreds of years ago? That's the simple logic that defeats choice D. Everything looks good. So you might have a question here that if we turn are into were, will choice D become correct? Yes, it will become correct if we turn are into were, and that's precisely the reason why we have are in this choice, because there will only and only be one correct answer in for any question. Okay, and that correct answer choice is indeed choice E. Again, these are slides telling you about the difference between simple present tense and simple past tense, so you can take a look at it. Choice E indeed is the correct answer that we have here. Okay, now This is the question I had asked you. You take a look at, this is my original sentence and this is my choice E. The only difference between these two is that this portion of my sentence has been placed right at the end of this sentence. Exactly what we were looking for to make this sentence correct. Okay? Now I have a few questions here, guys. If you have questions, put it in the Q&A pod, and Stacy will answer to those, but I'll take these questions that you have for me over here. From solid rock, help me connect the verb chisel to monasteries and not to mountains, as I did not know that's, see, whatever works for you, but what I'm trying to tell you is that the sentence will always contain a lot of context for you to understand exactly what's going on. Nothing will be too technical that you can say, hey, just because I do not know the meaning of this word, I cannot arrive at the correct answer choice. That's never, ever, ever going to happen with your official questions. And that's correct about all the three sections of verbal, SC, CR, and RC. Okay? R dotted, isn't this? Okay, we'll talk about that. Can you please explain the use of which? Okay, I will come to the whole part of which, many of them and many of which. Okay, we'll talk about that. Just hold on. Isn't many of which and in? Okay, again, same thing. The use of then and, all right. So let's come to that point. All of you are asking me the same question. Now, the use of both these expressions, many of which and many of them, are correct in this sentence. There are different structures, of course. When you say many of which, it calls for a verb, because which is, all we know, it's a modifier that starts a new clause, right? So that's why we have the verb are chiseled in this choice. But here, many of them, there is no compulsion for any verb here, because there is no subject in this expression, many of them. Okay? But do you really need to worry about all of this? Many of which, clause, just a phrase modifier. Do we really need to get into the technicalities of these grammatical structure over here? Not really. If I understood the meaning of the sentence, for example, I know are chiseled cannot go with something that has happened so many years back, right? Even if I were to talk about something that COVID started in 2019, that action of starting took place in 2019. It's a past action. So that's how it goes. Just the logic of it, we understand what structure the sentence is using. Okay, so both these structures are correct, many of which and many of them. One requires the use of a verb because of the grammatical rule that goes with it, and the other does not. So that's why I'm saying if we replace are with were in choice D, it will become correct. It is only the incorrect tense that is making choice D incorrect. Okay, so both the structures are acceptable, both the structures are correct, but it's just that tense issue in choice D that makes it incorrect. All right, so here I'm clearing all the answers. Does everything make sense in this question for you? Do you understand what's going on with this now? Right, so be very, very careful when you read your sentence for the first time. Again, read them in smaller chunks. Think of them as small little pieces. In SC, we are picking up the logical cues. We are picking up the logical hints in these small little chunks of sentences so that we can crack the logical mystery, and then everything becomes so very smooth. Okay, if you keep that logical focus, you will never go wrong with SC sentences. All right. All right. So just a little more facts about this question. Of course, we did not have to worry about much of the grammar in the sentence. just logically we could arrive at the correct answer choice for this particular question, and most of you did actually, right? And progressively the underlying portion of the sentence kept increasing from 25% to 55% to 100% in question number 3. But the beauty of this meaning-based approach is that it does not matter which part of this, how much part of the sentence is underlined. If we have the meaning-based approach, we can solve all questions. We need not worry about, okay, I'm focusing on this part, I'm focusing on that part. It will never work. You cannot solve a sentence correction question just by solving or just by concentrating on the underlying portion of the sentence. That's just a fragment of it. But in order to understand the meaning of the sentence, you will have to read the entire sentence. And then only you can understand the logic of the sentence. All right. So with this, I have a question for you, but I really don't need answers. This is just a little introspection that you can do. What solutions do you use for every SC question that you solve? Mostly OG, right? Because that's our main source of questions. What better than solving questions created by the test makers themselves, right? But OG questions are brilliant, but I'm deeply dismayed to say that their explanations are not very great. They lack that detail, and they lack that unified approach to solve questions. There are inconsistencies there. Somewhere they will say, okay, this works. Somewhere they will say, hey, this does not work. The same thing, But at e-GMAT, every solution that we create is created through this logical approach. All the 3 questions that we have solved, it started off with that breaking the sentence into smaller chunks and then trying to understand the meaning, and then we look at the answer choices. In the beginning, it may appear to be a time-consuming process, and it is a time-consuming process because it's a new process. At e-GMAT, you are just not learning a new process, but you'll first have to unlearn your old habits, your old methods, and then you pick up this new method. And it will take you some time to master this approach. But once you are there, once this approach has become intuitive to you, we guarantee you that you will be able to solve each and every question under 90 seconds. I'm not even taking you to 2 minutes. It's under 90 seconds. Okay? But yeah, mastering the process might take some time. And of course, with practice makes a man perfect, and a woman too. I mean, not that I'm trying to say anything over here, but what I'm trying to say here is that if we stick to our practice, everything is going to work out. Okay. With this, we have come to the very last question of our sentence. And same ritual, before we show you the question, can you please click on Still Solving? Once I get a fair number over here, I will show you the question. Few more votes? Just a few more? Let's get that number to, yeah, couple more. Oh, I got it. Let's go. By far, this is the most complicated and context-heavy sentence in the session. Okay, so that's why we've kept it for the end. So still keep, again, keep that logical hat on, as I said before, and because here you are going to require your logical skills, I think the most. So all the very best. All right, most of you are done through this question. Pretty context heavy sentence, I know. It takes time to work through this. But let's now try to wind this one up. Let's take last 10 seconds. I have just one person saying still solving. All right, I'm ending the poll because all of you have made some selection. Now, before I deep dive into this question, I want to know how many of you are 100% confident about the selection that you made. You're absolutely sure, you know the right reasons. If I were to hand over the mic to you, you would be able to explain this question to everybody. How many of you have that level of confidence that I know what I've selected is correct and I can explain the logic of my selection? All right. So that number is not really high. Nothing to worry. I'm assuring you that by the time we are done working through this sentence, all of you will be able to explain the logic of this sentence to anybody you meet. Okay, let's just do that. Alrighty. So, youth sentence. Look at how many words. I mean, more than 40 words in here. And I'm not going to make any sense out of it. So I'll have to take a look at this sentence into smaller chunks and then I'll stitch them together to understand the logical meaning. Okay, so let's do that. About 5 million acres in the United States have been invaded by leafy spurge. Okay, so what I understand here is that a huge land area has been covered by something called leafy spurge. Now, even if I don't understand the meaning of the leafy spurge from what I have read so far, leafy spurge, it tells me that it's a kind of vegetation, right? That's what it appears to be. All right. The author is my real friend. He's explained to me what leafy spurge is. A herbaceous plant. You know, probably it belongs to the herb species. That's why herbaceous. I really don't need to know all of that. But I understand that it's a kind of a vegetation that has come from Eurasia. And then what about it? This leafy spurge, this vegetation, it contains a kind of sap or liquid which is milky. It looks white. So, okay, very good. I understand all of that. That gives mouth sores to cattle. Okay. This makes sense too. The milky sap in the leafy spurge gives mouth sores to cattle when they chew it. That makes sense also. Now, let's deal with the last part of the sentence. Okay. So we will get a little bit grammatical here. We'll look at the grammar because there are certain constructions that give us very specific meanings, right? So, comma plus verb ing modifier, and by the way, this complex modifier, comma plus verb ing modifier, is part of our free trial course. Okay, so those of you who've not gone through it yet, I strongly recommend you go through it. It's one of the most complex concepts in GMAT SC, but it's part of our free trial course, so you can learn it without any cost. So yeah, make use of that good bargain that you have there. Okay, so comma plus verb ing modifier, it presents the result of an action. Okay, so basically my sentence is saying that because milky sap, this is my cause, right? This is my cause and I'm calling it C. So that's my cause. Because milky sap gives mouth sores to cattle, the result of this action is that milky sap displaces or replaces grasses and other cattle food. Does this cause and effect make any sense? Does this, no, I like that. So much emphasis, all caps. Yeah, it just does not make any sense. I mean, how can milky sap displace grass and cattle food? Absolutely absurd, of course. Now, if I were to ask you that which entity in the sentence can actually displace grasses and other cattle food? What entity in this sentence? Dank herb, the herbaceous plant or the leafy spurge. You can call it LS. You don't have to write so much. We love abbreviations here at e-GMAT. So yes, it is the herbaceous plant or the leafy spurge, because leafy spurge has been explained as herbaceous plant. So both the answers are correct because they talk about the same entity. So yes, it is the leafy spurge that displaces grasses and other cattle food. So I know that this meaning is absolutely off in this sentence. Okay? Now, let's take a look at this bit in the sentence. Again, this is my first effect, right? That was my effect number 1. This part of the sentence is presenting effect number 2. Okay? Now, so again, the sentence is saying, because milky sap gives mouth sores to cattle, it is the milky sap that makes the rangeland useless. Does this meaning make any sense to you? Is it the milky sap by giving mouth sores makes the grazing grounds useless? No. This much we understand. Now here is the point where we'll have to scratch our heads a little bit. Now before I give you that answer, if I were to ask you that what really makes the rangeland or the grazing grounds useless, why the grazing grounds become useless from whatever information we have in this sentence. Think about it. Think about it a little bit. Think about it a little bit. Displacement. That's exactly what I was looking for. Think about it. What happens is that because leafy spurge, we already know that the sentence is telling me that a huge land area has been covered by leafy spurge. So that means leafy spurge has already displaced grasses and other cattle food in many of the places. And if there are no grasses but only leafy spurge in those grounds, what will happen? The cattle will not come to graze there because the cattle get mouth sores by chewing the leafy spurge. And who wants a mouth sore? Why to eat the food that will give only discomfort to me? Right? So even animals understand that, and so they will not go to those places where the grasses have been displaced by leafy spurge. And it is this displacement that, and just because the leafy spurge has displaced all the grasses and other cattle food, the grazing grounds become absolutely useless, because no cattle would go there to eat leafy spurge because they get mouth sores. This is not this cause and effect that cattle will not eat leafy spurge because they get mouth sore. It's not explicitly mentioned in the sentence, but the context of the sentence gives me enough information to infer this meaning. And it's absolutely legit in the context of this sentence. You know, so here we could connect the logic and we could understand that the cause is fine, but the two effects that are basically the whole cause and effect is absolutely absurd in the context of this sentence. Okay, and so choice A just does not make any sense. Okay, I don't know why the presentation is skipping. Let's go back. I want to go back. It won't take me. Oh my goodness. Okay, so not only, oh my goodness. Okay, so all right, by this process not only did we understand that the logic of the sentence is incorrect, but we could also understand that what could be the possible logic, or what is the logic that should work in this sentence. First of all, we need to connect the action of displacing of grasses with leafy spurge. And secondly, we should present the information of rendering range length worthless in such a way so that it actually presents the result of the action of displacement. These are the two things that we need to fix in the sentence. And my choice B does exactly that for me. Choice B is our correct answer over here. Why? Because now it is saying about 5 million acres in the United States have been invaded by leafy spurge. We know what is leafy spurge with milky sap. Things will get a little technical over here, so please bear with me. Over here we see that. Now this that is not talking about milky sap. It's actually talking about, oops, let me get rid of this. This milky sap is actually this that is actually talking about this herbaceous plant, which is nothing else but the leafy spurge. All right. So why is it happening? You see, with milky sap is between two commas. So this is really just additional information about the herbaceous plant. And the structure of choice B is such that it gives that liberty to jump to herbaceous plant and connect with that. So now my choice B is actually telling me that it is the leafy spurge. This that is talking about leafy spurge. It is the leafy spurge that gives mouth sores to cattle. I want to ask you this question here. Is there anyone in this session who rejected choice B because you thought that choice B is changing the meaning of the sentence? Probably this sentence is now telling me that it is the leafy spurge that gives mouth sores, but my original sentence tells me that it is the milky sap that gives mouth sores. Okay, so I got 2 yeses over here. It's increasing. Very nice. Okay, so many of you so many of you actually thought that, hey, choice B is changing the meaning because it is not the leafy spurge that gives mouth sores. It is the milky sap that gives the mouth sores. Let me ask you this question. Are leafy spurge and milky sap mutually independent entities? How do cattle get mouth sore? When they chew leafy spurge. That's when the milky sap comes out. And that's, I mean, saying this, that the milky sap gives them mouth sores, is very, very technical, right? But if you really think on a very high level, on a very superficial level, on a very basic level, we know that the cattle is chewing the leaf, and there is something in the leaf that is giving cattle the mouth sores. So these two entities are not what I call mutually exclusive entities. Leafy spurge contains mouth sap, so there is no meaning change over here. Either we say that, okay, the milky sap in the leafy spurge gives mouth sore, or the leafy spurge gives mouth sore because of milky sap. The meaning is all and same. There's no change in meaning over here. So this again requires this little bit of logical analysis that, hey, these two entities are not independent of each other. Leafy spurge contains milky sap, so my meaning is not getting changed at all in choice B. So nothing wrong with that, okay? And then we understood by the analysis of our original sentence that displaces must connect with leafy spurge. So this error has been taken care of also, right? Now we are saying that it is the leafy spurge that displaces grasses, and other cattle food. That is exactly what we were looking for, right? And now I don't change anything about this last part of my portion because my comma plus verb ing is correctly presenting the result of displacing. Because leafy spurge displaces grasses and other cattle food, the result of this action is that the rangeland or the grazing grounds become useless. Okay, so no issues at all with the logic of my choice B. So choice B indeed is the correct answer, and let me broadcast the result. Great job. 52% of you did go with choice B. So yes, sometimes even without understanding so much logic, you could get to the correct answer. And that's why I asked you that how many of you are 100% confident about explaining this question to somebody, you know? So now you are absolutely, I'm sure. Okay. Let's see what's going on with the other answer choices. Okay. Now in this presentation, I've added something for you. Noun modifiers can modify faraway nouns. That is how my that is working in choice B. There is an article by the same name on GC. It's one of the most loved articles that we wrote back in 2012. You can take a look at that. I will share the link right at the end of the presentation. So definitely do so. Here are two simple examples that is there to explain the very same point that we saw in this official question. And you will be glad to know that this structure is very, very common in official sentences. So it's a good concept to know. It's a very helpful concept to know. Okay, and Stacy has created beautiful solutions for these two official questions also. Again, I will share the link for all these at the end of the session, so hang tight. So choice B, we've already figured out. It is absolutely correct. What is the problem with choice C? This is the structure. You know, another beauty of creating sentence structure is that I can see the grammatical aspects of my sentence also. You know, I can see this list is very, very clear here. There are two entities that are being made parallel. Having milky sap, which is talking about the herbaceous plant, and displacing grasses. This is also talking about herbaceous plant. So this logic is pretty okay, but, you know, this list does not make sense anymore. Why? I mean, grammatically, it is not correct because we cannot have a feature of an entity and an action done by entity parallel. Because a feature is a state of a noun, but an action is an active action. I mean, that's redundant, I know, but it's an action done by an entity which are not the same, right? So that's the problem with this sentence. And of course, this modifier at the end continues to pose the problem because now I don't know which action I shall connect it with. It's just hanging out there, you know, something like in GMAT world, this phrase dangling modifier is very popular. So yeah, I can call it a dangling modifier. I don't know which action to connect it with. So these are the two errors in choice C. Again, I want you to take a good look at the structure of choice D and appreciate this whole process of breaking the sentence down into small chunks. Just by looking at this, you can understand that, hey, where is that dancing partner that Stacy called? Where is that dancing partner for 5 million acres? Where is my verb for 5 million acres? I can't see it anywhere in the sentence because what acted as a verb has been changed here. My original sentence said 5 million acres in the United States have been invaded, but that have been has changed into having been, which doesn't work as a verb anymore. And so I don't have my dancing partner for 5 million acres. So choice D is absolutely wrong. One of the most blatant errors, in any sentence correction sentence, a missing word for a subject or a missing subject for a verb. Easiest to find out. But in a structure like this, you may lose a track of it, and that's why break your sentence down. Okay? Then very apparent list over here that gives, see, there are no commas here, okay? Milky sap, no commas. So that is talking about milky sap now. Milky sap gives mouth sore, okay, makes sense. Milky sap displaces grasses, come on, don't kid with me. Milky sap renders rangeland worthless, how does that even happen? Absolutely. So elegant, right? Looks perfectly parallel, so beautiful. Gives, displaces, renders, 3 verbs coming back to back. But does it make any sense? It does not. Milky sap cannot do the last 2 actions. Just doesn't work. Okay. Now comes the last one. Last one also has the same issue, having been, again, when I break it down into this kind of a structure, it's so very easy for me to take a look at that. So that's my first issue. Again, coming to this part of the sentence, that has milky sap giving mouth sores. What is this giving connecting with? It is connecting with milky sap. So milky sap giving mouth sore, yes, I accept this. But milky sap displacing grasses and other cattle food, I do not accept that, because that's not logical. So again, my logic is messed up. The grammar is messed up. Once again, we have what we call a hanging a modifier that just does not connect with anything in this sentence. So this sentence, the choice E, again, is out of question. It's absolutely incorrect. So if I show you all the answer choices at one go, here we have it. Tell me how many of you are 100% confident that you can explain this question with only the help of logic to somebody else. How many of you? Take 2 short answer poll and let me know. Me, yeah, that's a big me. I like that. Right. So really, this is the beauty of the meaning-based approach. When you concentrate on that, there are so many grammatical rules. Isn't it easier to stick to our meaning-based approach without having to worry about so many rules and regulations? Don't get me wrong, I'm not at all discounting or disconnecting the importance of grammar in sentence correction. But come to think of it, it is the logic that we want to communicate. And so first we think of the logic, and then how are we going to present that logic? That's when we incorporate grammar, right? That's when we use grammar to present the logic. So first and foremost thing, we need to look at the logic of the sentence. Once we have understood the whole working of the logic in the context of the given sentence, things become so easy to move forward. Okay? All right, so with this, a few stats again. This question again is a 700 level question. Almost 85% of the question was underlined, but we did not worry about what is underlined, what is not underlined. We only focused from word to word, trying to understand the meaning of the question. And once we got through that, everything was so easy. Such a complex, context-heavy sentence, so many layers of information, but all we did was we stayed focused on our meaning. And so things were good, things were easy, things were very leafy and green and nice, right? So with this, I'm done with my part of presentation. I hope you enjoyed solving these 2 questions with me as I did solving these 2 questions with you. Thank you so very much. And now I would like to invite Rajat to conclude this session and take you to that next level, that 20 minutes of question and answer, where you can throw any question to him and he'll be glad to answer that for you. So Rajat, welcoming you back in the session. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Shraddha. And let me just make sure. Before we get to this last 20 minutes, I'd like to get your feedback on what have you learned so far. Let's just clear this poll here. And so, yeah, how's the session been so far? What have been your key takeaways? And hopefully you guys can hear me clearly. I didn't even ask that question, so but I'm assuming the audio at my end seems to be going okay. So hopefully you guys can hear me clearly as well. Okay, yeah. So what have your key learnings been? What has been your takeaway so far from the session? You can put those answers in the short answer pod. That'd be wonderful. Focus on meaning. Okay. Meaning is key. All right. Break a sentence into small parts. Logic as well. Good. How was this different from kind of the focus that you had before you joined the session? What was your opinion prior to joining this session? The focus was grammar. Okay. I was extremely grammar focused. Was playing by the rules. A lot of people do this. A lot of people think GMAT sentence correction is about grammar, and what they don't recognize is the reason why GMAT SC is a part of the SC is a part of the GMAT is because the test wants to make sure that you can express yourself and communicate yourself clearly. It's not a test of grammar. It uses grammar as a tool, but it's primarily a test of meaning and logic. And if you focus on rules, you can get very, very technical in rules. And by doing that, you will actually ignore what the test is testing for, and it's going to be very difficult for you to achieve that 90th percentile ability. Okay, and frankly, just a set of yay and nay. How many of you have spent 35 hours? What do you think you've spent 30 to 35 hours studying GMAT sentence correction? Let's get that piece over here. If you have spent 30 to 35 hours on GMAT SC, select yes, otherwise select no. All right, let's get a few more data points. I have about 60 students here in the webinar. All right, but 40% of those who've responded are close to half and half. And then if you're in this session, clearly you're not at that 90th percentile. I mean, that's why you are in this session. And so I'm not going to ask you this question. And based on the data that you're telling me, you don't approach every question using the meaning-based approach. For you, GMAT SC was about grammar. And then you're not alone in this journey. There are lots and lots of folks who approach GMAT SC through the lens of grammar. Why? Because grammar seems interesting. It's fun to learn something that you think you have no idea about, and you say, "Hey, let me learn grammar." And once I do this, all I've got to do is apply those rules and get there. And fortunately, I wouldn't say unfortunately. Fortunately, that isn't the case. Why? Because GMAT SC is about logic, and logic is something that each one of you can master. And this is something that Rohit learned. This guy's a medical doctor, and he's also, prior to taking the GMAT, he had also aced the IAS, or what we call as the IDES exam. And despite doing that, he learned a bunch of grammar. Very, very smart guy. If you watch his interview on our YouTube channel, you'd see that. Despite that, he was only able to get to a V32, but he was able to improve from that V32, which is the 65th percentile on GMAT verbal, to a V42 once he actually started using the meaning-based approach. And the problem that he faced was with grammar, he couldn't really figure out how to get to the right answer. I'm sure many of you face the same dilemma when solving difficult questions, and in the questions that you guys solved in this session, your brain would tell you multiple answer choices seem right. They sound right or so. And with the meaning-based approach, you can really narrow it down and say, hey, I understand why these ones are wrong and why this particular answer choice is right. Or in other words, you'd reject answer choices on solid grounds. You start seeing that, and for me, the goal of this portion is to tell you what should you do next so that you kind of take a very similar journey. Similarly, Jim, scored a 700, wasn't able to improve beyond it. This guy's a native speaker, and what he recognized was when it comes to those difficult questions, it's not going to be about grammar. It's going to be meaning, and the only way you'd be able to solve those questions correctly in 90 seconds or fewer is if you focus on that, on understanding what's the logical meaning that the sentence wants to communicate. Okay. And this is one of the reasons why, because of our focus on meaning, we've accounted for 61% of all 700 plus scores that have been reported on GMAT Club in this time period from June of 2021 to October of 2021. In fact, if we add November, we created this chart some time back. That number, I think, is going to be even higher. We're going to be edging towards that 63%. And in the other 39% over here, you have companies such as Target Test Prep, Crack Verbal, Manhattan Prep, and so on and so forth overall. And similarly, if you want to look at primarily verbal scores and you want to look at the time period from January of 2021 till October 31st, we've accounted for a majority of V38 plus scores. Again, why V38 plus? Because that's 85th percentile on GMAT verbal. And everyone else, the other 12 GMAT Club partners, have accounted for 138, or again, I think the ratio is round about that 58-42%. So this is 58% here. Everyone else is about that 42% or so. And for the very simple reason that, many of the approaches that you see over here were made by people on this team. So Payal came up with a meaning-based approach. Similarly, Payal came up with reading strategies when it comes to RC. We have an RC session next week. You can attend that and you'll see those reading strategies that are there. Similarly, pre-thinking is another approach that the falsification question is something that we invented at e-GMAT, and I think we're one of the 2 companies that now uses that. And one of the other reasons why, if you look at top-rated instructors on GMAT Club, and GMAT Club does have a ranking, you'd find Payal, Shraddha, and myself as amongst the top 3 over there. Okay. Now let's kind of talk about how can you break a sentence down into smaller chunks. If you're an e-GMAT student, you've gone through the master comprehension course, and we teach you that piece over there. So even before we focus on really phrases, clauses, or any technical aspects, you've got to learn how the skill of strategic pausing, or the skill of breaking a sentence down into small parts. And if you don't know that, and if you skip the master comprehension course, please make sure that you go through it. But then the question is, GMAT is a test of application. You've got to know those concepts, the subject, verb, verbs, and so on and so forth. But you also have to make sure that you learn how to apply this. And you've got to have a method that tells you that you now know the concepts and you now know how to apply those concepts as well. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't recognize is that, and again, this is something where I need some help from you. Most people think GMAT SC is about learning subject, verb, verbs, pronouns, and so on and so forth. And so it's a list of about 8 to 9 big concept areas. And they believe that that essentially once they learn those concepts, they're going to solve questions. And as you solve questions, they're going to analyze their mistakes and then get to that 90th percentile. Just from a yes, no, I'm going to clear the poll up. Is that what your thought process was before when you came into this webinar? Hey, it's about those 8 concepts or so, and I'm going to do that, solve questions, get better, blah, 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 blah. And then, once I solve 300-400 questions, I analyze my mistakes, maybe build an error log, and I'm going to get to that 90th percentile. That is not the way that most people will get to 90th percentile. And the reason for that is, when it comes to GMAT SC, it's not about those technical concepts that the test tests. It is actually about what I call as 200 different sentence structures that are tested on the GMAT. And you solve 4 questions today. In just those 4 questions, you probably analyze about 20 sentence structures. And to get to that 90th percentile ability, you have to master these 200 sentence structures or so. Once you master them, frankly, you'd see very similar sentence structures on the test, and acing the GMAT becomes a lot easier. Okay. But you need to have evidence that you've truly mastered these 200 SC sentence structures or 200 sentence structures or so. And by the way, these sentence structures are not just limited to the GMAT. If you read New York Times, if you read The Economist, if you read Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, you're going to find these 200 sentence structures cover about 95% of all the content out there. So it's not just about GMAT SC. In general, good reading is that. In other words, once you mastered these, you'd be able to really figure out simpler things such as, when verb ED forms are expressed as verbs versus modifiers, when noun plus noun modifiers can modify slightly far away nouns. This is stuff that you can really you were tested on today. When verb ing modifier acts as either an action or a noun modifier, or if you get more advanced, you'd be able to figure out cases in which verb ing modifiers or noun plus noun modifiers they go and express the same meaning. Okay. When you do a voice change, and that leads to modifier errors or so. Okay. Very interesting question. The proportion of people getting 700 plus scores of people who subscribe to e-GMAT. I'll answer that question in a minute. And the reason for this is because once you understand this framework, answering that question becomes a lot easier. So to learn these concepts, you actually need to master these concepts. This should be master over here. You need to make sure that you learn these sentence structures, and then some of these would come naturally to you, others won't. And those that don't come naturally to you, you've got to go back, refine those, and then make sure you get so good at recognizing how errors are put across these sentence structures through messing up the logic, that you're able to solve those 700 level questions or so. Okay. So the only way you get to learn these 200 sentence structures is through feedback. So in e-GMAT, everyone who goes through the e-GMAT course gets feedback, and you give feedback 100 plus times. Now, let's look at this very interesting question: that what proportion of people who get to who subscribe to e-GMAT get to 700 plus? The answer to this is dependent on this feedback. When you get feedback, if you act on it and if you follow the corrective action, which is right then and there, then that number is about 80%. If you don't act on it, then that and you kind of go on and leave those gaps there, then there's a 90% chance you will not get a 700 plus score. So diligent students actually get to that 700 plus score with 80% certainty. And the bottom line is, within the first 40 minutes of your learning, you'd get to know if you're being diligent, because that feedback will tell you that you're going on the right path or you're going on the wrong path. How many of you, if you're an e-GMAT student, I'm sure some of you are here, how many of you received corrective actions when you go through the SC course? So you say, hey, your application file scores are not up there, you've not applying the process. How many of you have received that email if you've gotten low scores on your application files? Yes. And if you do something to address that, you're going to get there. If you don't do anything to address that, then no coaching company, no private tutor can help you get to that 700 plus score. But the important thing is, we correct your problems. We at least attempt to correct your problems as you make them. If you act upon it, you have an 80% certainty to get to that 700 plus score, which is why you see those results out there. So if you excel at these assessments, you go through and do cementing properly, and then you do the test readiness, hit those metrics, you can be almost certain, and when I say almost certain, you can be within that 5% or 95% confidence interval, as we technically got that. Okay, then yes. And for those of you who have not gotten this, then this means your scores or our evaluation of how you're doing the SC course is in that good range, and that's why you don't get it. Okay. And one of the other things which we do at e-GMAT is we teach you application right when you're learning concepts. And so when you go through our SC course or CR course or RC or Quant, you'd see application interspersed with learning concepts. So just in the SC course, you'd learn application 23 times, which if you think about it is phenomenal, because most people just learn all the concepts without learning application and then solve questions. Not as efficient a way of to learn as it should be. For example, in subject verb, you learn application twice. So you're not just learning the subject verb concepts, you're learning that application there. In verbs, you learn that 3 times. In modifier, you have 5 different interventions where you learn how to apply modifiers. Similarly, you can see parallelism and comparisons. You have 7 different interventions or so. And that's very important. Why? Because just learning concepts, doesn't get you anything. It's about applying those concepts and getting that feedback that, hey, you're able to apply what you've learned. Okay. And you can see some of how that feedback helps. So this is one of the simplest modules on the e-GMAT platform. It's a subject verb module. One of the first things you'll see is how detailed that this module is. This entire module just in subject verb is about 3 to 4 hours of learning content here. The second thing, every activity here is evaluated. So this 100% is not completion. It's an evaluation, a score based on the questions that you solved after learning the concept. Similarly, this time is not the length of the video, but the time that you spent over here. Okay. Now, how do you know if someone's been doing well? If you get good scores, you're doing well. If you get bad scores, but if you spend time revising those, then you're doing well. And then the outcome of this 47 minutes spent in SV application is that the next file, which is a practice quiz, which is to confirm that you know how to apply this, this person scored 100%. Now, yeah, these numbers are good because, again, you can see the person doing well over here. Okay, let's look at verbs. Now, this is an older screenshot of verbs module. Your current screenshot is a bit more descriptive, but the key thing that I want to focus on is look at the amount of, actually, no, let's go over here. We talked about this. I want to go to the verbs module. Let's look at verbs. Look at the amount of time this guy spent on sequencing, which is a really complex concept. Verbs application, about 48 minutes. Now, this guy in verbs practice quiz made a few mistakes over here, which is why he's got a 64%. And forgive me if you guys can't read it. Let me see if I can zoom it in here. But you see, okay, that's not a great score, but he was still able to get 100% in the next file. How did that happen? The reason this happened was because he revised his mistakes. How do we know this? We look at his quiz results screen over here. You see he's bookmarked these questions that he made a mistake on. You can also see this one's a hard question. This one's a medium difficulty question. This is a guy who actually scored a 730 again in his third attempt, and this problem wasn't the knowledge of concepts. He knew the rules. It was just that he wasn't applying the meaning-based approach. And when you want to get to that, more challenging questions, it's the meaning-based approach that's going to be a game changer for you. Okay, so what are some of the next steps? Make sure you take a look at the free trial. We have about 6 concept files in the free trial. Apply the meaning-based approach to them. And then if you need help with your study plan, if you need help placing the GMAT, write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. All right, with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Let me also share a few links with you. Meanwhile, I can see questions come in. So the success stories that I shared with you, you guys can watch some of these over here. Those of you there was a guy who asking what percentage of people who get to who study from e-GMAT get to 700 plus scores. If you look at this link number 4, which says e-GMAT status GMAT club records, click on it, you'd get a really good answer to that question here. If you want to really see some non-natives achieve insanely high scores, Magdalena's interview is really good. Okay, and then let me also share links to some SC articles over here. Okay, questions. Someone who's starting at a 500, how likely are you to hit a 700 plus score? So how likely are you? It depends on how diligent you are. If you're hitting the metrics internally, you're very likely to hit a 700 plus score. And when I say hitting the metrics, if you do well on the files over here, the way I showed, if the numbers look good, 80% or higher, and A on B if you do cementing well. So if you do cementing in SC, CR, RC, and Quant, and you hit the metrics over there, you're very likely to hit 700 plus score or so. If you don't hit the metrics, you're also very likely to not hit 700 plus scores as well. The session PDF is there. The other thing I want to make sure is 500 to 700 is about 230 hours of effort. So make sure you budget that time. Don't think about taking the test in a month or so. 200 hours is usually about 3 months of effort. Okay. When would PACE for verbal be released? PACE for verbal is, as we said, end of Q1 is what we're looking for. PACE for quant is actually being released as we talk about. And for those of you who don't know what PACE is, it's the latest addition to our AI that we released on Thursday. If you are on our YouTube channel, you probably are aware of it. And PACE stands for Personalized Adaptive Course Engine, which means that as you attempt through courses, there's an AI that's analyzing that, and it's kind of either reducing the length of course that you need to go through if you've shown proficiency, or adding more content to it. Okay. Just yes, no over here. How many of you are aware of PACE or have experienced PACE? Okay. Examples of people who've gone from 500 to 700. You have one over here in the success stories. Karthik 570 to 740. You can look at this. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can see many more of such examples. And let me share a video which talks about PACE as well. So our launch video for PACE. It's going to be right below the session PDF. Actually, not right below. It's going to be in the success stories bracket because I can only paste URLs there. All right. You should see as number 6 PACE come up over here. And I've just launched it for all of you. So, other questions: how long does it take to go from a 700 to a 740? It's about 50 hours of effort is what you should take to go from a 700 to a 740, round about that, plus minus 20 hours or so. We have that special program called the Last Mile Push program, in which we give you that, we build a personalized study plan, we give you a tracking strategy, and we touch base with you multiple times if you are in that 662 to 740 bracket and you want to improve your scores. So again, if you go to our YouTube channel, you can probably see 20-25 such success stories in the last 3 months or so. Okay. Any other question? And while you post your questions for me, let me post some questions for you. How many of you are applying in round 2 or still looking to apply in round 2? That's in the short answer pod. You can put your questions there, or put your responses there. I'm sorry. How many of you are still looking to apply in round 2? And then to which schools? How many of you are, okay, 2 people are still looking to apply in round 2. Which schools? Okay. A sec. Okay, let's look at a few more folks. 4 people are planning to apply in round 2. Nanda has another question. He says, I have a 640 on Sigma X mark, but he's quite skeptical about my grammar. I want to score 760. How would you want me to plan ahead? So Nanda, I don't know if you've gone through the SC course. I mean, frankly, if you're skeptical about your grammar, if you've gone through the SC course, the metrics are good, don't be skeptical. If you've not gone through the SC course, then go through the SC course. I mean, that's the first thing. If you're a 640, want to get to a 760, then start with master comprehension, go through the SC course, achieve that 90th percentile ability. I mean, think about it this way. A 760 is 99 percentile, which means you have to be almost perfect in all areas. And so, you've got to figure out that Sigma X mock tells you your ability scores in SCCR and RC. So you've got to figure out how much ability gap you have on the verbal side. Similarly, it will tell you your ability gaps in arithmetic and algebra, and then correspondingly fill that ability gap over there. Al says, what approach to take after finishing all courses? So Al, first of all, don't finish all courses on a trot. Make sure you finish a course and do cementing. Then you go to the next course, finish a course, do cementing, and then do 2 course test readiness. Then finish the 3rd course, do cementing, do 3 course test readiness, and that's the approach that you should take. So, and as you're doing this, frankly, what you're going to find is that by the time you finish all the courses that you need to finish, because you may not need to finish all courses, you may be naturally good at in some areas, you'd be very close to your target GMAT score. Because as you're doing this, you're not just learning something, you're ensuring that you're hitting, you're in that 80th percentile zone in SC before you start CR, you're in CR before you start number properties, and so on and so forth. So as long as you ensure you get to that zone, you'd actually be much more confident of hitting that 730, 760, whatever score you're aiming for. And if you have doubts, write to the support team. They will tell you if you are there or not, because they can look at all the metrics, as can you, by the way, and figure out what a percentile ability score you are in that particular subsection. And that's the beauty of the e-GMAT platform. It's what we call internally is proven predictability. Proven means because we have so many students who hit these metrics and who end up hitting those scores, and predictability means that, hey, you can predict what you're going to do based on what the data that we see on the platform. So yeah, there are no surprises. We can predict whether you're going to succeed. We can predict whether you're going to fail. I mean, that's where our predictions go bad, is where we go back and figure out why did they go bad, and in those rare cases we make tweaks. But we've gotten so good, which is where I say we have that 95% confidence interval. If you hit those metrics, you're going to hit a 700. And a 95% confidence interval, if you don't hit those metrics, you are not going to hit that 700. It cuts either way. Bottom line is you won't have surprises either way. Okay. Data is beautiful, frankly, is what I would say. If any one of you wants to really see how data could predict learning success, and we'd love to hire students. A lot of our students work for us. They delay their MBA, or those of you who really say have 3 years before my MBA, like to spend and understand how to build products. They work for us, and it's just, they kind of recognize the power, the predictive power of data. So for example, if you go back, go to a YouTube session and a YouTube channel, I think about a month and a half ago, I interviewed someone called Rida, who'd be joining our team on the 9th as a GMAT strategy expert. And so, she was mentored by one of our GMAT strategy experts. Now she wants to help other people do this. And she'd be joining them. Similarly, a couple of other former students would be joining as well in that way. So, but yeah, data in every sphere is beautifully predictable. And in something which is, I would call it as confined as the GMAT, because when you create the right framework around it, the GMAT is very predictable. Data can lead to amazing insights. And if you watch the PACE launch, you'd see how some of that data is being used as well. Okay. All right, guys, with that, I won't keep you long. Again, remember, tomorrow we have our number properties session, and then next week we have a few webinars as well, so definitely register for them. And again, if you have questions, write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. With that, as I always say, happy learning, stay motivated, stay focused, and continue to actually do a reasonable number of sacrifices as you prepare for the GMAT and go for that MBA, because sometimes those sacrifices are needed. Thank you, and I'll see you guys on e-GMAT.com.